Good afternoon. So I thought I would share with you the time I was on jury duty that I actually ended up hearing some evidence. I did get dismissed before the final portion of the court case happened, but I'd been on jury duty before and just never actually called. Had to go to the courthouse, sit around, and then get dismissed. But on this time, I was brought in, and they actually brought in a judge from out of town because this was in Huntsville, Alabama, Madison County, and they were like 6 or 7 years behind on civil cases. So they brought in an extra judge, and they brought in a pool of us jurors specifically to try and catch up on this. So we sit in the room, you entertain yourself, and then eventually I get called into the courtroom. But instead of there being 12, there were 36 of us. And I guess maybe this was only because it was a civil case instead of a criminal case. They sort of did the voir dire as they began the case. And so we were hearing actual evidence from the case after maybe about 10 or 15 minutes of them doing some basic, questions. I remember two of the questions they asked were, do you think that people should receive money if they've been hurt by the actions of someone else? And I, was kind of flabbergasted. I was like, I thought that was the whole point behind a civil case. Somebody else was criminal or dumb or mean or something bad, and someone else suffered. So of course this is about getting them money. I mean, I know some civil cases can be about like, no, you can't cut that tree down, or no, you can't leave your house painted hot pink, stuff like that. But a lot of times, civil cases are about, you hurt somebody and now you have to pay. So this particular case was a rear end accident, slow speed, didn't really make a whole lot of damage to the cars. But the guy who rear-ended the other guy had a glass or a glass and a half of wine at dinner, is what we were told. And I think there was even, there may have been a breathalyzer test, I can't remember, but if it was, it didn't show the guy as being legally drunk at all, so that wasn't part of the case. He wasn't arrested for DUI or anything like that. And so we're hearing this case, and then we take a break for lunch. So, and I think I was dumb enough back then to still be smoking a cigarette now and then. And so I'm downstairs where all of the jurors who smoke cigarettes are, which happened to be next to one of those Civil War statues. And so we're outside the courthouse, and we're down, the large steps, and you got the Civil War whoever right there next to the steps, and and it's courthouse steps. It's a lot of steps to get up there. And I was, in pretty good shape and, feeling good that day, but I've got a limp, so I sort of pay attention to things like steps. I got a limp. So I'm down there talking with a couple other jurors having a cigarette, and the guy doing the suing is down there with his two attorneys, and they're having cigarettes. So somebody looks up and goes, oh, it's about time, we better get back. And the two attorneys and the plaintiff start going up the steps. And now the plaintiff, we've already learned this part in the first part of the day, he is suing because he now has a bad back from this rear end accident that happened 6 years before. And dude bounds up the steps like 2 or 3 at a time, and blink, he's at the top before his lawyers ever get there. And I'm down there, and I kind of look over at a couple of the jurors who kind of look at me, and we're like, okay. Now, we didn't receive an instruction, at least not yet at this point in the case, to ignore any evidence from outside the courtroom. We hadn't been told anything like that. And I don't know if we would have, because when we get back up in there, it goes back into sort of a voir dire thing. And I ended up getting myself kicked off the jury pool because they asked someone, again, some sort of variant of the, if someone's hurt in an accident, what do you think is the right thing to do? And there was this big dude sitting right up front, and I was closer to the back. And I mean, he was big. He was probably 6'5", wide, football player looking dude, dressed in a suit. And they ask you to stand up when you're the main person answering or whatever. And he stands up and he goes, well, I understand that he should have to pay to fix the man's car. And, if that guy missed work, then he should have to pay for that. And if he had medical bills, he should certainly have to pay for that. But I just can't see any moral justification for pain and suffering money, because that's just, how could you quantify that? And if you can't quantify it, then you can't put a number on it. So nobody should get any pain and suffering money. I just don't believe in that. And so the plaintiff's attorney is like, strike him, Your Honor. And they had set these rules beforehand that said, like, if you feel strongly about something, or if you have something to say, we need you to speak up. The rules are here, you have to speak up. And I was like, oh, okay. And so then right after that guy, they kicked him out, and they said, and the guy was like pretty forceful with what he said. Oh, and the plaintiff's attorney said, and sir, what do you do for a living? And he goes, I'm an insurance agent. And of course, in my mind, I'm like, of course you are. And he's probably never been injured a day in his life. He's about 40 years old, and he looks like, he just walked out of, a locker room, in the greatest shape of his life, sort of thing. And so they asked the question after he's struck, does anyone disagree with what that guy just said? And like, nobody said anything. Said, I do. I think what he just said is complete and utter nonsense. The only way you can compensate someone who's been hurt by someone else's crime or stupidity is with money. So of course you're supposed to be able to assign a monetary value to someone's pain and suffering. It might not be right value, it might not be, enough money, but at least there's got to be something. So I got struck off of the jury after that. So maybe about 6 months later, I get a phone call, and I fixed computers back then out of a brick and mortar location on the regular for my town. And I get a call, someone needs some help with their computers. It's not acting right, and they've moved their business, and they're just having trouble. And so I say, oh, okay. So I go over there, and I meet these two guys that own an antiques mall. And they show me their computer, and I'm like, I know this guy from somewhere. And he's doing the same thing. He's like, you seem familiar. And I'm like, well, I'm the computer guy. I'm all over town. My company's actually named Computer Man. I'm right down the street there. And they're like, he's like, yeah. And then about the same time, both of us go, the court case, you were on my jury. And I was like, oh, yeah. So when I went on your jury, they kicked me off after I, said that insurance guy was a jackass. And he goes, I remember that and everything. And so we talked and everything, and they were customers of mine for years. And I told him, and I asked him, I said, well, what happened? And he said, oh, the guy won $80,000. And I'm like, what a giant crock. And he's like, what? I said, because we were outside having a smoke break, and that guy was out there, and he ran up the stairs like there was absolutely nothing wrong with him. So I guess it was kind of good that I got kicked off of that jury, because I'd have been hard pressed to ignore the fact that this guy's in there going, I've got major back problems. And I'm like, you don't look like you do. You don't act like you do. So that was my one time being on jury duty.